let's talk a little bit about Kyle Shanahan.
Mm.
Seems like there's been an awful lot of debate about Shanahan and his value, and some people seem like they're taking a lot of shots at Shanahan. Personally, I think Shanahan is an outstanding NFL coach. Have the Niners won the Super Bowl? No. Is he the perfect head coach? No. But he's an offensive coach whose offense produces points. And I'll say this, I mean, if last year doesn't make you a Shanahan fan, what will make you a Shanahan fan? If Brock Purdy's really as flawed as so many people are coming out of the woodwork to tell us, he can't do this and he can't do that and he can't do the other and he's not this and he's not that and he doesn't have this and he doesn't have that, then how did this team make it to the freaking NFC Championship game with a rookie quarterback? So if Brock sucks, then doesn't that mean that Shanahan is that much better? To me, I've never understood the people that are like, Brock's limited, Brock can't do this, and Shanahan's terrible. Well, wait a second. Something's not jiving. So this team made it to the NFC Championship game, and they've been in 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games, and Brock ain't any good, and Shanahan's not any good. So how did they get there? It's just they just had this magic took a magic pill.
That's it. They got lucky.
Wait, take my magic pill. Let me wash it down. I've taken my Super Bowl pill, and now we're on the road to the Super Bowl with a third string quarterback and a head coach that can't coach. So Shanahan sucks and Brock sucks, but they both together they made it to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, they made him. Doctor might have given him the NFC Championship.
Okay, let's talk Shanahan for a minute. Let's forget all the talk. Where does Shanahan rank in today's coaches? And there's all kinds of barometers. People will use who's been to a Super Bowl. Okay, but I mean, what if you went to a Super Bowl? Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl. So is he not as good as Mike McCarthy? Didn't Mike McCarthy win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
So is Shanahan not as good as Mike McCarthy? So I don't know if I think Shanahan, who's beaten Mike McCarthy 2 times in the last 2 years in the playoffs, I think he's a better coach than Mike McCarthy. But McCarthy's got a Super Bowl win, and Shanahan doesn't. So that can't be the measuring stick. Otherwise, McCarthy's better than Shanahan, and in my mind, he's clearly not. So I look at it this way. If every NFL coach were fired tomorrow and they were all out there in free agency, who would get the biggest contract? And I think Kyle Shanahan might get the biggest contract of anybody. Now, does that mean that he's the best? Well, then there's that factor as well. It's like, well, why does he get in the biggest contract? Partially because of his skill, but partially because of his age. So I would probably put Andy Reid up top just because Andy Reid, look what Andy Reid's been able to accomplish with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
They take away Tyreek Hill, their offense doesn't miss a beat. They're in some ways they're more explosive without him than they were with him. So I'll put Reid at the top, and I think you got to put Belichick at the top just on a lifetime achievement award. Though, how good's Belichick been? I mean, Belichick just chose Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So how smart was that move? So I mean, everybody's got a different measuring stick. I would say Kyle Shanahan, in my mind, is a top 5 NFL head coach. If you say who are the best coaches in football, I would say Bill Belichick, maybe Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Though the Steelers haven't won a Super Bowl anytime recently. And they were basically 500 last year. And they had a rookie quarterback, but they went 9-8. Somehow the Niners had a rookie quarterback, and they found a way to go 13-4. But definitely Tomlin, I think, is a great head coach. I'm a big Vrabel fan, but I wouldn't put him up there. Doug Peterson's won a Super Bowl, but I wouldn't put him in front of Shanahan. I mean, who do you got? Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl, but it's been a while.
In a minute. League change.
Sirianni Has done some nice things in Philly, but I wouldn't put him over Shanahan.
What about Harbaugh from Baltimore, the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean he's a good coach. There's no question about it. Would I say he's a better coach than Kyle Shanahan? I don't know. I mean, what's John Harbaugh's a special teams coach.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that he's not a great coach. I think he's a very good coach. Okay, maybe John Harbaugh. So you got Reed, Belichick, Tomlin, Harbaugh. Arthur Smith, I think, is a very good coach in Atlanta. I think we saw that. Pete Carroll has won a Super Bowl, but Pete's almost on the way out. Sounds like he could have been fired last couple of years. Sean McVay's won a Super Bowl, but his team went 5-12, had the worst record ever off of a Super Bowl win. They didn't even win 30% of their games last year. I would say, in my mind, Kyle Shanahan is a top 5 NFL head coach.
Easy. At the very least, top 5. But he gets a lot of crap, a lot of criticism from Niner fans. I don't know. There's high standards. If you're a Niner fan, high standards. 5-time Super Bowl champions. We've been searching for that 6th one. But
and we're not saying he's a perfect head coach.
Not perfect, not the best. He's not, but I still think he's a great coach. Like you said, if you fire every coach in the NFL and it's a free agent pool, he would by far, in a way, be one of the top coaches that people are looking for. Maybe Belichick, Andy Reid, who, and I've said this before, this is a take that many people have said. Kyle Shanahan is a young Andy Reid. When Andy Reid was first in the league as a coach, he got so close every single time, and he would lose in the Super Bowl, lose in the NFC Championship. They labeled him a choker, and I think that's what Niner fans feel about Kyle, that he's a choker. He can't win the big one. He's to this, he's to that. But listen, 3 NFC Championship games, the Super Bowl, he's so close. He's so close. Is it the quarterback? Maybe. He got Jimmy G to a Super Bowl, Larry. He got Jimmy Garoppolo to Super Bowl. So if you're going to sit here and doubt him and say Trey Lance sucks or Brock Purdy sucks, the man got Jimmy Garoppolo to Super Bowl. That's all I got to say. Kyle Shanahan's a good offensive mind. He's very innovative. A lot of the offensive concepts in the NFL, they're stolen from Kyle Shanahan. Look at how many people implement his offense now. Look at Mike McDaniel out in Miami. I mean, he learned. Him and Kyle were in the same train of thought. McVay, all those guys were in the same coaching discipline, and they're all taken from a Mike McCarthy. All these guys, they take from Kyle Shanahan and his dad, the Shanahan system, and they're running their own version of it. So to sit here and say Kyle Shanahan is not a good coach, it's crazy because he's a very innovative coach. He just needs to be more aggressive when he gets to the big dance in the big game. That's it. I think eventually he'll get his championship, and I think a little bit of an ego problem. I think he does have a little bit of an ego, but he's if you're a head coach, if you're an alpha type guy, that's just who you're going to be. And a lot of athletes, a lot of people in sports, you got a little bit of an ego, and I think people see that and it rubs them the wrong way, and they're mad because the 49ers have lost in big games. But this guy, hell of a coach, man. And again, 3 NFC championships, a Super Bowl. He took this team in 2017, and what they've done since, and the roster he's helped cultivate has been amazing, man. Like, you got to remember, before Shanahan, after Harbaugh left, I mean, we were in dog days, man, with Jim Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, and then even before Harbaugh. I mean, there's some bad coaches, Erickson, and all those other bad coaches. But Shanahan, in terms of 49er coaches, he's been one of the better ones overall throughout their franchise history. I think once he gets that Super Bowl, I think it'll give him that validation. But honestly, there's not a lot of coaches that I would take over him. I know Tomlin their team always is 500, but he doesn't win in the playoffs. He had 1 Super Bowl in the last 15 years. Great. Like you said, with Sean McVay, he bought a Super Bowl, and the Niners had their number. The 1 year we didn't beat them, it was unfortunate. But other than that, we own McVay. Sean Payton, great coach, but he hasn't been relevant for a long time. Will he even be able to keep up with today's NFL? I don't know. We saw what Gruden. He came back after over a decade, and he was not a good coach. So I still take Shanahan over a lot of coaches. I love Belichick, but guess what? I think a lot of that had to do with Brady. That duo's not there. He hasn't been winning like he was, although he's a great defensive mastermind. I got to give him that. Belichick's still an amazing coach, but he's kind of fallen off. Andy Reid, to me, that's the best coach in the NFL. And I think Kyle is following his footsteps. If they can get this quarterback situation figured out, he'll win a few championships.
Well, I mean, to me, I think Andy Reid's the great comparison. Okay, so to me, Kyle Shanahan is Andy Reid in a lot of ways. Andy Reid, went to 19 playoff games in Philadelphia. He won 10 and lost 9. Basically 500 coach in the playoffs. Only in Kansas City has he gone to 19 playoff games, and he's 12-7, and he's got 2 Super Bowls now. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs, but he hadn't before that. What had he done? He hadn't even been to. He'd been to what, one NFC Championship game in Philadelphia. They made it to the 2004 NFC Championship game. The rest of those years they lost in the playoffs. They didn't even make it to the conference championship game. So I don't know. I mean, is Andy Reid right now? I think if you said, give me a ranking of coaches, I think most people that would rank him would probably put Andy Reid, if not at the top, very, very close to the top. And it's all based on what he's done in Kansas City. And he'd been coaching for 20 years before he got to Kansas City. Andy Reid was a 55-year-old head coach with the Chiefs. He got his head coaching opportunity with Philly. He was 41. He didn't win a Super Bowl until he was 61. I mean, it took 20 years before Andy Reid won a Super Bowl, and yet most people who would rank head coaches would say Andy Reid's one of the best in the business. So I look at Shanahan as very much kind of like Andy Reid. Has he won the Super Bowl? No. So if you want to say that everybody who's won a Super Bowl is better than him, then go ahead. You can have Mike McCarthy. But I'll guarantee you this: if you put Mike McCarthy and Kyle Shanahan both in the free agent market, Kyle Shanahan's getting a bigger deal with more control and more dollars.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah.
So I would say he's better than Mike McCarthy. And Jeffrey Bond says Andy Reid has 0 rings if Patrick Mahomes doesn't exist. Well, and Mike McCarthy has 0 rings if Aaron Rodgers doesn't exist. And Bill Walsh probably has 0 rings if Joe Montana doesn't exist. And, we can play this game until the cows come home.
Which is why we're getting quarterback every single year, Larry. That's the whole point is once they figure out this quarterback situation, Kyle's going to win his Super Bowl. That's it. Bottom line.
And, a lot of people are like, M. Patel's like Kyle Shanahan passed on Patrick Mahomes, as did a bunch of other coaches, right? Because Mahomes went, 10 or something like that? Yeah. So all I'm saying is, at the end of the day, if Purdy's really bad and he's got all these flaws, Shanahan made it to the NFC Championship game with this third-string quarterback who didn't take over until December. That's pretty – either Purdy's a lot better than we think or Shanahan's a lot better than we think. But you can't live in some alternate universe where they're both no good. And somehow this team averaged 33 points a game after Brock came in and made it to the NFC Championship game. Something doesn't work there. Either Purdy's a whole lot better and Shanahan's really flawed, or Shanahan's pretty damn good and Purdy's flawed. But they can't both be flawed, if you see my reasoning.